Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. We have consensus. Okay, so let's move on to item 2.05, our Student Equity in Action Spotlight. Mr. Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Silkworth. So before I announce this month's Student Equity awardee, I just wanted to take a moment on behalf of the Board of Education to thank Ms. Katara West, Senior Specialist from the Office of Equity and SEEK Coordinator, and the members of the Student Equity Advisory Team, or SEEK Committee, Jack Mewitt, a 9th grader from Crofton High School, Lisa Nee, a 12th grader from North County High School, Megan Spencer, an 8th grader at Severna Park Middle School, uh, Amit Cooper, an 8th grader at Brooklyn Park Middle School, Tanya Hurd, a 12th grader from Annapolis High School, and Lila Pabon, an 8th grader from Crofton Middle School, for the time, effort, and enthusiasm you have given our Student Equity and Action Spotlight recognition this past school year. Celebrating the work and accomplishments of Anne Arundel County Public School students gives us joy, and it is because of you and your committee members that this program is flourishing. We look forward to honoring more students beginning October 2024. So for our Student Equity and Action Spotlight, May 2024, we have our final Student Equity and Action Spotlight for school year 2023-2024 goes to a senior who is an advocate for inclusiveness, equity, and equality within Anne Arundel County Public Schools, Broadneck High School's very own Brenton Mead. Brenton is a founding member and secretary of the Let's Talk Justice Student Forum, which allows for discussions about social justice issues. He is the president of the Chesapeake Regional Association of Student Councils, which is a space for students of all backgrounds to discuss school-related issues, create change, and shape school system policy. He is the state legislative affairs coordinator for the Maryland Association of Student Councils, which provides advocacy and funding resources for both students and adults. Within his school, Brenton is a tutor for the National Honor Society and a mentor in the Apex Art Piano program. He is an ambassador for Broadneck's Black Student Union and facilitated and is currently preparing an additional voter registration form to talk about why youth civic engagement is important, how to vote, and where to find credible sources. Brenton was formerly a member of the Anne Arundel County Public Schools Novel Review Committee, reading from authors of various socioeconomic and racial backgrounds and scoring them for diversity and literary value. He was also a part of the AACPS Social Studies Curriculum Review Committee and a member of the AACPS Mental Health Task Force, making recommendations to reduce stigma and access gaps in schools. He has provided feedback on modifications to college and career readiness standards to the Maryland State Department of Education. While Brenton is not here with us tonight, as he is unable to attend due to him performing with his Apex Art class this evening, the Board of Education of Anne Arundel County Public Schools and Broadneck High School are very proud of you for the person that you have become, and we are excited to award you the May 2024 Student Equity and Action Spotlight. And we do have a video prepared showing Brenton accepting this award.
Thank you so much for this honor. I want to thank my family, my Krask family, especially the mentors at the Board of Education who have made me who I am today. I also want to thank my school community. The thing I'm going to miss the most about the school is being in this program, in this room with my Apex Piano family. So I want to say thank you to them and to everybody at Broadneck High School that's allowed me to succeed as far as I have.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 2.06, our Candace C.W. Antwine Military Service Award. Ms. Shelheim.
Yes, I'm so excited about this. The Candace C.W. Antwine Military Service Award was established in 2021 to honor the military and civic service of my dear friend and fellow board member, Candace Antwine. She was a Navy veteran and a committed and passionate voice for military families and children in need throughout Anne Arundel County. Candace served our nation in active duty, reserve, and civil servant capacities. She was a member of the Board of Education of Anne Arundel County from 2018 until her unexpected death in 2021. The Candace C.W. Antwine Military Service Award is given each spring to AACPS students who have made a similar commitment by enlisting to serve in the United States military upon graduation. It assists awardees with initial expenses related to enlisting, including basic training supplies, and aims to remove financial barriers to military service. Tonight, we will award 3 deserving students who have enlisted to serve our country in the military after graduation. These students and scores of others in the AACPS family who will serve via enlistment deserve the highest praise for this commitment to serve our nation and protect our freedoms. Tonight, each of these 3 remarkable students will receive $1,500 to help offset the costs associated with basic training. After I read the following, please join me in the well for some photos. Our first recipient, Anna Rosas, is from Broadneck High School. Anna has enlisted in the Army and is currently in the Navy JROTC program. The first of her family to graduate high school. Anna looks forward to using these skills she's learned in the Navy Junior ROTC in the Army. John Rafiq from Northeast High School has enlisted in the Navy. He has been involved in his community since he was very young and sees enlisting as an extension of his service mentality. John plans on simultaneously completing college while serving in the Navy. Mia Moore is also from Northeast High School, has enlisted in the Navy. Believing that joining the military will be her greatest challenge, but also her biggest accomplishment, Mia looks forward to serving this great country while encouraging other young women like her to chase her dreams. Congratulations, Anna, Mia, and John. And we're gonna scooch together and back up a little bit, and then we're gonna take some photos. Yeah. Yes, you'll be arranged
Yes.
by our.
I know.
Photos, or did you get what you needed? You got what you needed?
All right.
I'm the parents too.
Congratulations to the families. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it? Yes. Congratulations. If it doesn't. Just.
Okay, we're going to be moving on. We have, I think we had one person signed up for public comments. Mr. Mosier, is that individual here? Let me see. Ethan, my view. Ethan? Once again, a call. Ethan, my view. Okay. So it appears he's not here, so that means we will have no public comments on agenda items. So we're going to move on to item 4.01, crash report. We do not have a crash report this evening. We'll move to item 4.02, the PTA report. Good evening.
Good evening. President Silkworth, Dr. Bedell, board members, and guests. My name is Christine Crandall, the president of the Anne Arundel County Council of PTAs. The next AACC PTA monthly meeting will be held virtually on Monday, May 13th at 5:30 p.m. We look forward to seeing all of our local leaders. To ensure you are receiving important AACC PTA messages, meeting registration, and training information, please send us your local PTA units officers' contact information at info@aaccpta.org or contact us on Facebook. Please also reach out to us if you're in need of assistance with compliance issues. Please also contact us if your board is in need of training. At this May's PTA meeting, we'll be going over our elections, as it is basically that time of year for anyone's PTAs that need to do elections. On May 6th through May 10th is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we would like to thank every teacher and staff member across the county. May 11th, AACC PTA will participate in the Intergenerational Mental Health Awareness event on Saturday, May 11th at Cat North High School, hosted by the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. Registration is now available for the June 29th through 27th through the 29th Level Up PTA 2024 virtual convention hosted by the National PTA. Registration can be completed by visiting www.pta.org and then events. The Free State PTA 2024 convention will be held in person July 20th and 21st in Linthicum Heights, Maryland. Registration is now open and can be completed by visiting www.fspta.org/registration. This is an excellent opportunity for training and meeting other local PTA leaders. Hope to see you there. In closing, as always, we encourage and challenge each board member to join at least one PTA this school year, and maybe even attend a PTA meeting to hear firsthand the issues in the community. Thank you again for allowing us to speak this evening.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 4.03, our policy committee report. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. The policy committee met yesterday and reviewed 3 policies. First is eligible riders, policy EAA. I mentioned this in my last committee report, and the committee had considered it at that time, and we had some more questions for staff. And so if you recall, I asked Dr. Tobin to sort of represent the committee with staff to try and get our questions answered. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Tobin just to explain.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ellis. Yes, thanks to Ms. Wilson for convening a meeting of staff to discuss this policy, which there were a number of questions about where we stand with regard to ridership, radii, walking radii, that kind of thing, and various other issues. And I feel it to have been a very productive meeting. The result was that most of the questions that we had are really more issues of regulation and to some extent just some practical notions of how to get the information out to families with regard to the appeals process and so on. So I thank all the staff, particularly Dr. Heiser, the transportation team, for their help with this. And the net result was no additional amendments other than the changes that had already been prepared by Ms. Wilson and a couple of smaller changes to regulations. So thank you to the committee. Thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin, for the update. We also reviewed policy IL, education and services for students with disabilities. Some may recall that we recently reviewed and passed a policy related to students with disabilities. And this policy was basically discovered by staff, I believe, to be existing in our among our policies, and therefore it is redundant and not nearly as thorough as the one we recently passed. So that one will be coming before this board for basically rescinding because it's unnecessary at this time. And then the committee reviewed a new proposed policy, I'm sorry, I forgot what it was, JU, I believe it was, JU. And it deals with requests for displays in classrooms. There was some discussion about the policy, which I believe was initiated by a board member or members, I'm not sure. And the policy committee had some discussion. There was some disagreement on whether this policy would be brought before the board. The committee took 2 votes and the committee was divided on this. However, at the time of the meeting, we normally have board counsel present, and he was not able to be in attendance at that meeting. So I had suggested that we get some advice from counsel on the procedure there. But that's where we left it.
Ms. Schellheim.
Respectfully, I'm gonna disagree with some of the report just made. The board took 2 votes, both of which failed on a 2-2 vote, meaning that the board did not take action to move the policy, to recommend that the policy get moved to the full board. While I think we're gonna talk with Darren, there was no action to table that policy either. That would have required a motion, a second, and a vote. So I think there's some disagreement between you and I about what happened yesterday.
Ms. Frank.
Yes, I would just like to ask the policy committee chair, has this ever happened where there was not a legal impediment, but a policy was chosen not to move forward?
In my time on the policy committee, I'm sorry. In my time on the policy committee, I do not recall the policy committee discussing the merits of a policy before us and then deciding that the policy did not have merit. I do recall an incident where a policy was discussed by the committee and found to be redundant with something that already existed in policy. And I believe the person who proposed that policy was on the committee and agreed at that point that we weren't going to move it forward. But that to my recollection, that's.
So 2 members of this board can prevent policy from being seen by the full board from committee?
According to the vote, two members of the policy committee voted to bring it before the board, but it did not have a vote of 3. So the policy committee failed to decide or to bring it before the board.
Okay. Per our handbook, we have a board norm where 2 board members are able to bring an agenda item onto an agenda. So I will ask if any one of my fellow board members would like to be the second for seeing this policy on an agenda in the future.
I'll second the member so we can have the conversation.
Okay. And per our handbook, I will provide that in writing to the president. Thank you.
Dr. Tobin.
I simply wanted to raise a concern that the note was made by the chair that because our attorney was not present, that changed, I guess, potentially changed things. I think if we, it was not my understanding when I was chair of the policy committee that that was a requirement. But if it is a requirement, it should be made clear before discussion and before a vote is taken, rather than after. A vote was taken, and respectfully, why do we have votes if board members can't vote, or if their only vote option is a yes, which, if I'm understanding the conversation, that is the insinuation. I take seriously my job as a committee member. I believe if all we want is legal review, then we don't need a committee. Thank you.
Michelle Hunt.
I also want to state that every single policy committee that this board and previous iterations have ever had talks about merits of every single policy that come before us. That's what we do. We talk about what should or should be struck from a policy. We provide input to the superintendent side of the house regarding regulations. We talk about the merits of those. That's all that we do. That's the purpose of the committee. Thank you.
Ms. Frank.
Yes, thank you. As Budget Committee Chair, when we receive amendments for the budget, I'd just like to point out that we do not turn away amendments, that the role of the committee is to organize the information to present to the board, not determine the value of the amendment. So it was my understanding that that was more so the role of the policy committee, less an arbiter and a screening presentation.
Ms. Ellis.
Procedurally, I had questions for our attorney, and that's what I had brought up. And that's why I had recommended that the policy committee consult with the attorney when he was present. So that's to clear that up. And so I did make some notes. I wasn't sure I was going to speak too much on this because honestly, you know, my purpose here is to report to the community what happened, you know, the events that take place in a policy committee meeting, and that's what I did. But now that these questions are being brought up, I will share my view of what the policy committee is and what it's there for, because I also take my role very seriously on the policy committee. So there were insinuations, I'd say even more strongly than insinuations, that the policy that we were reviewing, policy JU, was somehow a new iteration of a policy that failed some months ago, policy IS. And policy JU is not policy IS. It is quite the opposite. So to characterize this proposed policy as a second attempt at the same policy is disingenuous and appears as a diversion to interfere with the opportunity for civil discourse, the opportunity for sharing ideas. My statements that I'm making right now are not about the merits of the proposed policy, as my thoughts on flags in the classroom were made clear in the public debate around policy IS. My statements today are about the democratic process. When multiple members seem to have an interest in a policy, in this case, half the policy committee and whatever board member or members develop this proposed policy, which is not the same as an endorsement, who are we as a body to stand as a roadblock to members representing their constituents? What are we afraid of? Is this policy, if this policy were brought forth for public review and comment, are members fearful of a different outcome, that the previous policy they claim is the same? Are they fearful of a passionate display of ideas on this policy, or that it may actually pass? If there's even the possibility of a policy passing, then this policy must have its day before this board. That's what democracy is. I will state, as I stated in yesterday's policy committee meeting, that I was not and am not prepared to argue or even determine for myself the merits of policy JU at this early stage. But I will at every turn defend the democratic process, the freedom of ideas. In my 3 years on the policy committee, we've not prevented a policy from coming before the board based on the merits of the ideas. Yes, we do discuss them at times and make the policy the best that it can be before we bring it to the board, and then members have the opportunity to amend it. In fact, I believe last year's proposed policy IS was unanimously voted by the policy committee to come before the board because of the democratic process. And when that happened, that was not an endorsement of that policy. It was not giving merit to the policy by the committee or members of the committee. We have many times sent policy back to staff for edits or clarification prior to presenting it to the board, such as policy EAA that I just mentioned. But like I just stated a few minutes ago when I was asked, I can only remember one time when we didn't actually move it forward for reasons that I already stated. I've heard accusations of politics fly around this dais as members simply disagreed with an idea. There's nothing to me more political, in my opinion, than members of a committee of this board using their seat to impede the democratic process and standing in the way of bringing forth a proposed policy. Our committee should serve an administrative function for this board and not hold power over the board. And I believe that addresses the accusations that I feel have been made this evening.
Ms. Corkadell.
So as a former chair of the policy committee and being involved in our policy on policy, I will say that our policy committee serves a very good purpose for us. What I don't see is anything of authority beyond recommendation. And so I do have a little bit of concern when we split hairs on a technicality to instruct something that we do not want. And that want was made very clear, or I don't like very clear. And so it's our job to benevolently take these on and take these up. And I believe that our calendar that we review at the beginning of every school year says these are the policies that we're going to construct. And I guess if the superintendent or the Office of Law had issues about the context, our policy on policy would address that. And that would be probably a report to the board that they were not able to fulfill the request legally. That is not the case that I'm understanding here, which is why I seconded the motion, because I really think that we need to be careful that we are not crisscrossing a lot of our rules, putting emphasis one day on one rule, deciding that a board handbook versus a policy versus a regulation and how we operate is a baseline how we normally conduct business. Absent something great or grand should be the way we continue to operate until we have memorialized something to the contrary. So regardless of how anybody feels about a policy or a version of a backdoor policy or whatever I'm hearing, it's all hearsay. So I'm going to table all of it and just simply point out that I do believe the board has an obligation to follow through with what we agreed upon at the beginning of the year. And otherwise, to the contrary. I would also suggest that if a policy committee is getting ready to review something or an outcome has occurred, that the report, although made public during our meeting, does not create a barrier for other conversations to occur to make sure. I do find it troubling that a committee would render a decision with limited or after debate legal advice, because that's supposed to be all part of the integrated process before the policy committee. And when they're voting, they're not voting to kill the bill. They are voting whether or not to recommend that it move forward with its first reading to the board. So unfortunately, this is back to, I do think we need a little bit more legal advice. But barring anything that would prohibit us from taking it on, I think we already made the obligation. And the policy committee is moving through with their schedule. And there should be no good reason outside of the request of the requestor, or even in some cases, that it would be somehow limited, except for something that would be maybe legally enlightening. So I'm not on that board, of course. And I would suggest that maybe we get a little bit more legal advice onto what policy committee does and does not do in its interpretation, and what the policy development process does and does not do. And then the absolute pull trigger always is that a board member can request an item on an agenda and present something accordingly. And because it's already been through the review process, I'm not aware of anything would prohibit. But again, I do think that maybe a little more intimate conversation between our president, the person who requested the policy, Ms. Wilson, and the policy chair should perhaps occur, to reconcile some of the technical differences that I'm hearing. But ultimately, I will always support the opportunities for that. And I will also point out that we have asked our committee to make recommendations on amendments while we were in a policy already before us. And board members have chosen to advance those despite the recommendation in the past, and have also requested policy despite recommendation of the policy in the past. So I do think that we have had always granted some flexibility and grace, and this would be an instance as such, barring anything that our attorney may identify as problematic as to being legal or not. Thank you, Mr. President.
Dr. Tobin.
I feel I need to respond, given both that the chair has characterized the motivations of the people who voted in a way she disagreed with. I find that deeply, deeply insulting. You have no idea of anyone else's motivations. You have characterized your view of the policy. Mr. President, it is inappropriate for us to discuss the merits of the policy here, but as someone has now chosen to characterize it, I will say firmly, this policy is on exactly the same issue as policy IS. It is simply a different process. And I feel strongly we do not waste the time of this board and this community relitigating something that has already been litigated when we already have plenty of real work to do. I'm sorry I had to bring this forward, but I have to respond to what I feel are some deeply inappropriate comments in this setting. Thank you.
Ms. Schauheim.
Yeah, I'm not sorry. I'm also offended. Questioning someone else's motivations is entirely inappropriate, and I think that folks that who have been on this board as long as the three of us have been should know better. Why have a vote at all to recommend or not recommend anything if the outcome is always assumed to be in the affirmative? Why bother? So all we did is we followed the process. We motioned properly and we seconded properly, and we took a vote not to recommend that this come before the whole board. As my other colleagues have already stated, there is another way to proceed with this. You get a second, as you have done, you get it on an agenda, which I'm sure you will do, and that's the other way that this works. But the policy committee is under zero obligations to ever recommend or not recommend a policy, because again, then what are we doing here? So yeah, and the fact that a statement was read, obviously some thought was put into that. I was just riffing, but yeah, this has already gone on long enough. I think we should have a proper characterization always of what goes on in committee. It is recorded after all. And like I said, this was not properly tabled either because it wasn't seconded, it wasn't motion seconded and voted on. So in my mind, this is a moot issue. This is not going to come back on our policy committee agenda because it wasn't properly tabled as such. Have all the conversations you want in the background, and I'm sure we'll see this on an agenda going sometime going forward. Thanks.
Okay, I'm recognizing one more light, and then I'm going to stop it. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Silkworth. I believe I just heard that I was arguing the merits of this policy, and I'm going back through my statement. And of course, I prepared a statement because it was clear that there were members of the committee that were going to make statements. And so I
object.
I don't know.
Clear to whom? I have no statement here.
No,
Recess.
it was
Folks.
clear to me based on my observations.
You are clairvoyant, evidently.
Ladies. All right, Ms. Ellis, please finish.
Well, I guess my premonitions were correct, and there were accusations made about me. And so I made a statement. And it's a statement I will stand by. I just read back through my words. I did not argue the merits of this policy in any way because I don't have.
Ms. Schauheim.
And I have heard the word political used on this dais multiple times. And therefore, I chose to point out that it goes both ways and that we need to respect each other as members and allow everyone to have their every member here was voted to be here, and they are representing their constituents, and we should not bury ideas within committees. Again, in my time on this committee, I have not seen a policy blocked from being brought before the board. And so I made a statement about the democratic process, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. All right, folks, we're going to move on. I will simply say this, and that is that the policy committee did have several votes. Those votes were taken. There was a result of those votes. Our handbook does specify that there is a procedure and a process for adding an item to the agenda, and it's been talked about and said that they will follow that. Someone will follow that. I guess my biggest concern is everything that we all should be doing in terms of how we can best help our kids and help our kids have the best outcomes possible. But having said that, I've already had some contact with our board attorney, and I will be a good listener, and we will take it from here, and we'll see where it lands. Okay, we're going to be moving on. Item 4.04, the president's report. I do have a few things here. Today we did attend the budget presentation by Stuart Pittman, our county executive, and our board. We'll obviously need to dig a little deeper into the budget in the next few weeks. But my initial reaction to what I heard today is that Mr. Pittman has done everything that he could to commit as many resources as he possibly can to our employees and our students. And we look forward to further collaboration with the county council and other stakeholders. So on April the 25th, with Dr. Bedell, Dr. Tobin, I believe Ms. Schauheim, we had the opportunity to go to a schools in court at the district court in Annapolis. This was hosted by District Court Judge Spencer and his team, along with Circuit Court Judge Clayton Green. All I can tell you, and I know Dr. Bedell would say the same thing, what a fantastic event. The student impact was phenomenal. Judge Spencer does a great job of helping our young people understand the realities of the judicial system and the impact that their decisions can have on their young lives. Every one of our students, I believe, should attend the Schools and Court program, and we thank them for everything that they did. On April the 22nd, had the honor to go to Woodside Elementary, the home of the Woodchucks. And we were there with Dr. Bedell and the governor, toured the building, and we were honored to witness his reading to some pre-K students and to us the story of the caterpillar. He did a marvelous job. And the Woodside students and their staff were absolutely great hosts. There's a picture that they were absolutely fantastic. So thanks to the Woodchucks, thanks to the staff at Woodside Elementary, and then thanks to the governor for visiting Woodside Elementary. On Monday, April the 29th, we had the opportunity to go to Glen Burnie High School. And that was for our Community Salutes program to honor those students who volunteered to serve in one branch of our armed forces. This great country of ours will be in good hands based on the young people who have decided to serve. This was also an opportunity for the awarding of the Candace Antwine scholarships by Ms. Schauheim. And these three wonderful young students that we saw earlier this evening, they did get their checks tonight. And I'd like to thank Ms. Schauheim for a great job to help that happen. On April 23rd, Dr. Bedell and I had the opportunity to be at North County High School with Senator Pam Beidle and Delegate Mark Chang. This was to dedicate the new turf field and the new field house, which were recently completed to the tune of almost $5 million, I believe. These facilities are absolutely amazing, and we would like to thank Senator Beidle and Delegate Chang for all of their support. This past Saturday, April 27th, I had the opportunity to travel to Ocean City. The Princess Royal Hotel, where the Maryland State Athletic Directors Association were holding their annual conference. I have to tell you, for me, it was a very personal event, a very special event, because two great things happened. One was Michael J. Baker. And by the way, when you go into the new gym at North County High School, when I announce basketball games, I always welcome everybody. Welcome to Michael J. Baker Hall, the home of the North County Knights. Michael Baker was inducted into the Maryland State Athletic Directors Association Hall of Fame. Why? Michael was, think of the person that is your absolute best friend. That's who Michael was to me. If you look on the screen, you see his wife, Janet, and his two daughters. He actually has another daughter. And by the way, they're all three dentists. Michael started at Brooklyn Park High School, senior high school, way back in the early 70s. And that's Mary Ann Schultz, by the way. Thank goodness for Mary Ann. She does so much for our kids. Mary Ann and I were both great friends of Michael. Michael actually was a basketball player, Dr. Bedell. College basketball player, just like you. I can say about Michael, he played basketball with Lou Alcindor. Not many folks have done that, but he was from New York City. He actually did play in high school against Lou Alcindor. But why was Mike inducted into the Maryland Athletic Directors Hall of Fame? I'm going to tell you from my standpoint. Mike was an educator. He was a physical education teacher. But Mike kind of taught me the values of being able to sit across the table and agree to disagree, the values of relationships. If I think about the Anne Arundel County Sports Hall of Fame, he's not in that yet, but hopefully we'll get there. Mike has impacted more students than anyone that I know. And so this was an absolutely marvelous event. Now, another thing happened, and that is a picture to the one side is Mr. Pete Albanos, who is our athletic director at Annapolis High School. He also was at North County High School. He's a Panther. Uh, Pete was inducted, or he was chosen as the Maryland Athletic Director of the Year in this region. And actually, Pete, good friends with Janet Baker and so forth. So for me, this was a great event, and I told Janet that there's not a day goes by that I don't think about Mike, and if I'm making decisions, it's about what the influence and impact that Mike had on me. So congratulations both to Mike Baker and Pete Albanos, and that does conclude my report this evening. I thank you for your indulgence, Ms. Shalheim.
So, firstly, I would like to thank the custodial staff, the principal, and Chris McMahon, who did the audiovisual, everyone involved with the OCS event. It's because of them and their hard work that that event was so spectacular. I wish all of us were there. I'm glad that Dr. Tobin, Robert, and I were there. And it was such a great event, and arguably better than last year. Also, I want to make a comment about the schools and court program. Insanely fabulous. Never seen anything like it before in my life. It was I don't even have the right words. It was emotional and moving and educational at every turn. And what a spectacular partnership between the court system and AACPS. It's something that I think, while not every student could probably get down for that to see it in person, like we were blessed to be able to do the other day alongside, I think there were a few different schools there and Harbor School.
Yep.
Perhaps there's a way to chunk it up and put it in videos for those who can't, because of their schedules, give up a half day to be part of that in person, because I think it's really that important and that good. And then lastly, I just want to say the governor's visit was so sweet and special, and the kids really took to him, and it was just a really magical visit. Of course, he didn't want a big entourage, and we clogged the whole hallway, but it was really neat. So I just wanted to say those things. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Shaham. Dr. Tobin.
Yeah, super quick. First of all, my daughter was so fascinated by the Courts and Schools program in high school that she signed up 2 years in a row to go, because she just said it was one of the most amazing things she experienced in high school. But my second request, a moment of privilege, Mr. President, is last night at the art show in the mall, I was extremely grateful to have as my guide a young lady, a fifth grader from Tracy's Elementary. So this is a shout out to you, Leona Wells. Thank you for an incredible tour and for our wonderful conversation. It was a joy. I love seeing your art, and I know you're going to do great things in the STEM program next year at Central Middle. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. I also was at that art or in the Annapolis Mall yesterday, an unbelievable talent. I would like to give a shout out to Alexandra from Crofton High School. She was my guide, and she did a marvelous, superb job. We just have some great. If you haven't had a chance, you need to go check it out. Okay, so we're going to move item 4.05, Superintendent's report. Dr. Bedell.
Yeah, thank you, President Silkworth. I have a lot today, and it's all positive. I'd like to start by congratulating Crofton High School's junior, Hafsa Hamdawi, on being elected the 51st student member of our Board of Education. We are very proud that our school system is the only local system in the nation with a student member with full voting rights. Hafsa was elected by members of CRASC, and after appointment by the governor, will begin her term on July 1. So we want to welcome her with open arms and look forward to a year of successful working together. I was also, I'm very proud to have had an opportunity to be at North County High School just this afternoon to see the school validated as an avid national demonstration site. North County is one of just 4 schools in Maryland to have that distinction. And another of those schools is Corcoran Middle School, which is the only middle school in the state, is also in our county. This is just another example of great things happening in our schools. And speaking of honors, again, you've heard this from several of our board members here, or no, you haven't, because this is a different recognition that does impact the military. Yesterday, I was at the State Board of Education to see 3 of our schools, Westmead Early Education Center, MacArthur Middle School, and Meade High School, recognized as Purple Star schools for their outstanding support of children and military families. This was a great way to round out April, which is the month of the military child. I also want to note that there are 8 Purple Star schools in Maryland, so nearly half of them are in our county. As Mr. Silkworth mentioned, we were pleased to have Governor Wes Moore visit Woodside Elementary School in Glen Burnie on last Friday. The governor is a huge supporter of our schools, so anytime we can invite him in to see the great things that are happening in our classroom, it's a great day. Governor Moore made the most of his hour at Woodside, visiting a 4th grade math class, reading to 3-year-old pre-K students, and being interviewed by members of the students of the school student leadership club. He and I even got an opportunity to purchase a book from the school's vending machine. The work of nearly 3,000 student artists is now in display at Westfield Annapolis Mall as part of the 2024 All-County Student Art Exhibit. I had a chance to meet some of the artists, take a number of pictures, and see this exhibit last night, and it's simply amazing. This exhibit runs through May 8th and is located in the area of the mall near Discovery's library. Please take an opportunity to go look at the type of talent through the dedicated art teachers that we have in this county and what they have been able to produce. It is simply amazing. As we mentioned previously, Daily Computers will hire as many as 40 of our students this summer to help with the Chromebook reconciliation program. Students will work from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and AACPS will provide transportation. Students must be 16 years old and will earn $15 per hour. Anyone interested should call Daily at 301-670-0381, or simply go to, as you can see here on the flyer, to the daily.com website, go to their career section, or you could even scan the QR code that's on the screen, as this, again, all of our board meetings are archived, so this will be available. There are still 2 opportunities for the public to interact with the cabinet and myself as part of our community conversation series. On May 6th, we will be at North County High School, and on May 8th, we will be at Meade Middle School. This is a great opportunity for everyone to spend an hour with our team discussing issues that are important to them. And finally, as we have promised, we will continue to keep you all up to date on our vacancies. As you can see, the red represents where we were last year at this time. The blue represents where we are this year at this time, as of May 1st, year-to-date comparisons. Again, we are filling vacancies for teachers. We will not resume that until we get later into the month of July to update you on where we are. Mr. President, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. I just want to say how great it is to hear about the Purple Star schools. Thank you for highlighting that. Dr. Bedell, anyone who has visited our schools in the Meade community, the support and the sense of pride in the community and it is phenomenal. And I think not a lot of people are, fully aware of the sacrifices that entire families make when someone serves our country. And it is an important thing to be distinguished. Thank you.
Ms. Crocodile.
Thank you, President Silkworth. I just wanted to say that the community conversation that we had at South River was awesome. And if you have a chance to attend those last two, I do think it is well worth it. The folks that I spoke with at the board table really, it's not what you think it is. It really is a conversation whereby which we identify some of our weaknesses. We talk a lot about our strengths and where we're going. It was very vision oriented, and any little technical detail questions, we're having the staff right there just to refer them over is amazing. But the feedback that I received from those who did attend in my general area were very pleased with it and are looking forward to another one next year, whatever you want to call it, whatever the theme is. I think you created a habit. Last year it was the launch, and then this year listening in. So, and I'll just say on the purple scene, that is why I was wearing my purple dress on Purple Day at our last board meeting, and maybe our board will honor our equity committee's decision to do that next year, since we haven't in the last 2 years.
Well, hold me
Thank you.
accountable for doing it, because it was clear yesterday that I missed the memo. Colonel Sapp made it very clear. Where's your purple tie? I said, yeah, I messed up on that one, sir. I'll
So
get it
Ms.
right.
Dent, 2 years ago in our equity committee, we decided as an equity committee, one of our main projects would be to ensure that this board represents in purple. So I got to say, no dissing on my fellow board members, because it's crazy busy and you don't see the memo reminder until the day of, and you may already be at work. But I hope we can get back into that habit, because that's just one little way of what we can do. There's a lot we can't do up here, but I think we can definitely well demonstrate.
Thank
The
you.
commander is a great person.
Thank you. And then just to follow up on the community conversation, you're absolutely right. What I do love about it is it's intimate. We don't have an overflow of people. I think it works out perfectly, because the people who do come, they get direct attention with all of these wonderful folks who are over here leading major divisions within this organization. And one of the comments that I did receive is from somebody that is a parent in our district, but is an administrator in Prince George's County. And she said, I'm going to bring this back, and this has to be shared in our school district. If we did more of this, where it's the people who they feel are behind, in the castle, behind all of the fancy doors, being out. And it means a lot to our community to be able to get to know just all of this talent that we have in this county at the cabinet level. So we feel like we got something here, and this is something that we will continue. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bell. We're going to move on to item 5.01, our new course approval.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. The team will come up, and what we're asking the board to do tonight upon the conclusion of their presentation is to approve team sports grade 6, which will begin in the 2025-2026 school year. So I will pass it over to Michelle and our academic team to take you through this.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. For the record, my name is Michelle Batten, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, and I am joined today by Christiana Walsh, our amazing Coordinator of Health, Physical Education, and Dance. In accordance with board policy for curriculum, today we will present one course for your approval, and this course is specific to enhancing the middle school experience. The main goal of AACPS is to ensure that every student belongs, grows in their learning, and succeeds as achievement and excellent gaps are eliminated. Courses are designed to provide all AACPS students with rigorous, relevant, and inclusive opportunities that enable them to successfully navigate and positively impact the 21st century global society.
The course proposal before you today is Team Sports 6. We currently offer several fine arts middle school encore courses at the middle school level. However, there have been requests from middle school parents and principals to extend the successful Team Sports 7 and 8 encore course to 6th grade students. To further enhance the middle school experience, we propose this new semesterized course for 6th graders, where they will not only engage in sport-specific skill development, conditioning, and gameplay, but will also explore the various roles and responsibilities associated with sports. Through the sports ed model, students will learn about coaching, refereeing, team management skills, statistical analysis, and more, exposing them to a world of job possibilities aligned with sports. By introducing this course at the 6th grade level, we will be able to provide vertical alignment in skill progression and cohesion through 8th grade. Students extend their learning each year, enriching their abilities in dynamic game-like environments. By adding this course to the program of study, we will also complement the proposed middle school athletics program, continuing to strengthen the partnership with curricular offerings and after-school opportunities. Our plan is to make this course available at the middle school for the 2025-2026 school year. With that goal in mind, our teams will be working hard to ensure that we put in all the necessary, or all of the things that we need to necessarily around curriculum writing and professional development for both teacher and student success.
We're happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Ms. Schellheim.
You know I love approving new courses. Did I hear you say the 25-26 school year?
Yes,
Just to get your ducks in a row?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm in full support of this, and I thank you for always bringing such great options for us to consider. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. I know there's been, a big push for middle school athletics. The benefits of athletics are undeniable for our students, and this will bring real equity to athletics because so many of our students do have the opportunity to participate in outside organizations, but then again, so many don't, and this will help them develop their skills so they can be competitive on those teams. Thank you.
And Ms. Ellis, I just wanted to say this too. One, you heard what the team said about our focus on really trying to enhance the middle school experience. I've been very clear that I feel like that experience has been neglected. We do a lot at the elementary level. We do a lot at the high school level. But what we also want our students to understand through these courses, which we have for 7th and 8th grade, is that you don't necessarily have to be somebody that is athletic in nature and want to participate in sports, but you may love sports and understand that there is a significant amount of opportunities for you to still engage in that without you being in the top 1% of athletes. You can make a career out of this, and this will help to introduce our kids to all of the various pathways that are available. So I'm really excited about what we're able to offer here now through 6th grade, 6 through 8.
That's a very important point, and thank you, Dr. Bedell.
Okay, so I think we're at the point where we need a motion.
Second.
Could you repeat that?
I'm sorry,
There
I
you
pushed the wrong button. Motion to approve the proposed course.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Howe?
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Mr. Lynn,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Nay.
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell,
Aye.
I'm so sorry.
sorry, 6-1 motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, item 5.02, our county executives recommended fiscal year 2025.
Thank you, Mr.
Operating and Capital Budget. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will have Mr. Stansky and Dr. Heiser who will come up and conduct this presentation. Both of them will conduct their presentations or just updates based on the budget presentation today from the county. And then as board members, if you have questions, feel free.
What's up? Oh, we'll have it up on the screen. Oh. Other one first. Yep. We're gonna do the other one first.
Operating first.
Yep. Yeah, all right. All right. Thank you. For the record, Matt Stansky, Chief Financial Officer.
Bill Heiser, Chief Operating Officer.
All right. As Dr. Bedell alluded to, County Executive Pittman released his proposed budget, fiscal 25 proposed budget at 11 o'clock today. Just lucky with the calendars, I guess, that we have a board meeting the same day. So our teams have been working diligently, and we have our handouts, our analysis for you to walk through. I'll just say, if you find us scrambling for papers to answer questions, it's only been a few hours, so just bear with us, but we'll do our best to walk through it. So we're going to start on the revenue side. There's been no change to the federal request of $3.3 million. First change is based on the governor's approved budget. So we are seeing a slight increase there. That additional funding was from, we're getting an additional concentration of poverty or community school added for 24-25 over what we had projected. And then we're also getting some additional funding for private pre-K, which I will address later in the presentation. We did see a slight reduction of about $300,000 in the governor's original budget. There was, we are allowed funding for tier 2 pre-K students. That's students who fell in the income bracket of 301% to 600%. Through legislation, the General Assembly pushed that requirement or that funding out. So for a few more fiscal years. And so therefore they then reduced that funding out of our budget. So overall, $20.3 million. I think it is important to note that $20.3 million last fiscal year was over $60 million. And before that was $62 million. So if you remember when I briefed you back in January, the fiscal 25 was just envisioned as kind of I don't want to say a pause year, but a slower growth year for blueprint implementation than what we had experienced the last 2 fiscal years. On top of our relatively flat enrollment, gets us to the really, it's only 3.9% growth we're seeing in state aid as compared to what we saw last year, which was significant growth, almost 13% in state revenue. So on the county side, I think, again, another healthy, robust year for us. $47.8 million. The board had originally requested $85 million. 47.8 is the total. It's a 5.4% increase. Just for, again, comparison purposes, last year's growth was 5.6%. So again, roughly around the same growth level as we were in prior years. It is significantly above maintenance of effort, $49 million over maintenance of effort. So again, I think the county executive is believing in what this board is doing and in the vision of Dr. Bedell, and I think that investment is reflective of that. So the next change is we have $17.9 million in local revenue. This is the board's revenue. We had only initially projected 14.9, and working with the county office, interest rates continue to be high. Inflation is starting to creep back up again. So therefore, we do not project interest rates to decline in the next 12 months, at least significantly decline in the next 12 months. And so because of that, we're getting more interest on the funds that we have sitting in the bank. And so we are comfortable with the new projection of roughly $18 million in local revenue. Fund balance remains unchanged from the board's request of $15.3 million. So all in, we're at $73.6 million. It's about a 5.1% increase in overall growth on the unrestricted budget. Just again, for comparison purposes, 8% was our projected revenue growth in fiscal 24. On the restricted side, no changes. Again, we're seeing the expiration of the vast majority of our federal COVID relief grants. So that's a significant impact. So all in, the current county executive proposals, $1.68 billion, a slight just $36.3 million increase. So only a 2.2% growth overall in revenue over fiscal 24. Again, for comparisons, we were at 7.8% last year, folks. So that is a significant decline in growth in overall resources to support our programming. Moving on to the expense side, where you see highlights will be changes. So we'll start right in on employee compensation. The board had requested a 3% funding for a 3% cost of living year and then a 2% mid-year at $35.9 million. The county executive is only funding at this point 26.9, which would be the equivalent of just the 3% COLA. So the county executive did remove the 2% mid-year. The step increase for fiscal 25 for all eligible employees was fully funded at $16.5 million. Next change is around healthcare. The board requested a $17 million increase to its contribution to the healthcare fund. County executive has recommended a $7.5 million increase. Obviously, we'll have to monitor our healthcare fund a lot more closely, only at $7.5 million. We obviously, this board can anticipate at its next meeting our fourth quarter transfer request, which will include some additional funding being redirected into the healthcare fund to help shore it up. The county has proposed a $5 million contribution to the healthcare fund in its third quarter, fiscal 24, which will be voted on next Monday. And so again, I think with those infusions of cash in 24, the county felt comfortable at the $7.5 million mark for 25. We're obviously going to have to work to provide additional funding in out years 26, 27, and obviously work with our labor partners to see what we can do to mitigate these costs. Next is the county is recommending an additional turnover cut of $2.5 million. This is, again, the money the school district saves either through vacancies or through folks retiring at a certain salary and being replaced with a lower salary. We feel comfortable with this additional cut, but we are now getting to the point where we're getting pretty close to the end of comfort around with our turnover number. We just want to make sure there's enough money there to hire everybody we want to hire. But I think given this cut, we're still going to be fine with that goal, with that stated goal in mind. Next on the list is our new schools. So the board for Severn Run High School asked for 94.5 positions at 9 points and a total budget of 9.6 million. County executive is recommending 73.5 and $7.9 million. So the positions that were modified from the original request include professional school counselors. We requested 6.5, 5.5 was approved. We will be reallocating one from an existing high school to give that school the total 6.5. Teaching assistants, we requested 6. 4 was approved. We will realign 2 from other schools to meet that requirement. We requested 19 teachers. 3 were approved. So the existing teaching allocation will have to be realigned again to support the needs of that school. Permanent subs, we requested 3. 2 was approved. We will be reducing 1 there. We requested 13 custodian positions. 12 were approved. And so we'll be reducing 1 to align it. That gets us more aligned with other high schools. And so those are the reductions we have there. I'll just speak to the teaching positions. In reviewing, we believe we were able to meet that within our existing allotment. That just reduces a little bit our flexibility for enrollment spikes in the summer and fall. It doesn't eliminate our ability to address those issues, but it does reduce, our capacity to do that. Moving on, Two Rivers Elementary School positions that were modified. We requested for school counseling. We requested 1 position. He did not approve that request, so we will be reallocating a counselor from an existing school to get a counselor into that new school. Teaching assistants, we have 4.5 requested, 3.5 were approved. So 1 will be reduced, which is in alignment with other schools. We requested a half-time social worker. That was not approved. Again, the half-time social worker is reduced to align with other schools. Teachers, we have 7 requested, 3 approved. So the existing, again, teaching allocation will be realigned to support the needs of that school. We requested 4 custodians, 3 were approved. So we reduced 1 there. We requested 2 secretary positions, 1 was approved. Teaching assistants, 5 were requested again for special education. 3 were approved. So 2 were reduced there. And then 5 special education teachers were requested. 3 were approved. So we're going to have to realign from our existing allotment to meet the needs of that school, for that school as well. So a lot of position reductions there. I think I would say that we're going to look at this closely, but at first glance, again, I think we feel comfortable that those schools will be able to open and operate effectively. But again, those reductions will limit our ability, not eliminate, but limit our ability to address any enrollment spikes in the summer and fall. We just have to be open and honest about that. Moving on to no changes to our existing contract and charter school. New Village Academy was fully funded. Our non-public special education was fully funded. Transportation contracts were reduced, or our payments. Given where our current spend is for fiscal 24, we feel comfortable that we will meet our obligations for next year at that reduced number. So there's no issue there. Moving down, I mentioned that we now have 38 community schools. So we will see a total of $8.5 million funneling into these 38 new money to funneling into these community schools. So that's great for those schools. The TSI and CCR programming, those cuts remain intact. County executive did not fund our local backfill request. The AIB and MSD are recognizing the CCR cut as a problem. They have just released, MSD just approved guidance that the AIB will be voting on later in May that discusses limitations around dual enrollment in AP and IB. So we will look at that guidance, look at our total budget, and we will have to address those with some guidance to schools in the next month or so. Small change again, no change to the workforce development. Here was the new one. So I said I was talking about private pre-K. So currently through the pre-K expansion grant, which is 100% funded by the state of Maryland, our 120 seats for Monarch Annapolis's pre-K program was funded through that program. Through the budget reconciliation, the state has determined they needed to free that grant money up to open up to new expansions for private providers. And so a determination was made that the existing schools on the expansion grant would have to come onto the local budgets. And so there's your $1.5 million. So now the 120 seats at Monarch Annapolis will be split funded between state and county. So we will get some state money for this, as I mentioned earlier, but it will mostly come out of our budget. And which was prior to that, it was 100% state funded. I think what was just a little frustrating was we knew at some point this was going to happen, and the expectation is we would be communicated about it in the fall to help prepare and plan. That clearly did not happen. It happened in the last minute budget adjustment in April. And so now we have a $1.5 million obligation that nobody was anticipating. But it is what it is. They're providing a good service for those 3 and 4-year-olds. And so we're going to recommend funding it, and happy to see that it's in the county executive's budget. All right, next on the list is our ESSER funding cliff items. First is classroom coverage. We asked for $2.2 million to meet this contractual obligation with TAC. As you know, when the pandemic started, we agreed to pay for, as we had a lot of vacancies, to pay for teachers who skipped or missed their planning time to cover classes. We have that permanently in our contractual agreement. The county executive has not funded that, so we are, as an administration, going to have to look, provide recommendation to see how we're going to have to cover this $2.2 million. The first thing I think we're going to have to look at is another pandemic program that we've had, which is extended subs. Schools have had subs that just come for 180 days to, again, help fill the void. It's been a good program for schools for the last 3 years, but we can't, we have to meet this obligation. And so that's one where we may have to reallocate funding. I'll just tell the board, pre-pandemic, we just had one account for substitutes. If a teacher had to cover a class, they were not compensated. Things have changed over time. We've now had multiple programs to get qualified substitutes or qualified folks in front of teachers, or in front of students, I should say. And so this cut, we will have to do some realigning in order to meet that obligation. Good news, back to good news. Technology was fully funded. So our laptop and Chromebook program that we were leasing through ESSER is now moving over to the general fund. So the county executive is fully funding that. So good news. On the ESSER OIT technology front, he is fully funding Google Voice and Google Suite, which is good. What is missing out of here is our LMS. But fortunately, the way the billing is for the LMS, we can pay for that for one more year out of ESSER. So we will pay for that for one more year out of ESSER, but then this will come back in fiscal 26, right? So we are not done with the funding cliff conversation. We will have more to come here in fiscal 26. Moving down, now we have a lot of yellows, guys. So the constituent service liaison that the board requested 2 positions was not funded. We asked for 3 additional classrooms in pre-kindergarten. That was not funded. I will tell you that we have realigned staffing in the winter to expand our pre-K as required by the law, anticipating that this may not get funded. So this is getting funded, but we have reallocated resources to fund this. English language development teachers, we asked for 7. They did not get funded. The recruiter and human resources was self-funded, so we are getting that FTE because we realigned funding within the human resources budget to accomplish that. On the school support front, the expanding AVID to elementary school did not get funded. Our CTE work-based learning facilitator positions and program did not get funded. We had 1.5 positions and $732,000 for middle school athletics and high school or in middle school clubs. Only the middle school athletic portion was funded. The enhancements to clubs were not funded. The high school club enhancement was not funded, and our virtual tutoring and homework help was also not funded. You see also the special education enhancements. None of those were recommended for funding. Moving down, one more page. And transportation, the drivers and aides for our alternative vehicle were not funded as well. So all in, again, 126 positions, $73.6 million, 2.2% increase. I think there's things to like about this budget and things that are frustrating too. But it's kind of the dynamic we're in right now. And after Dr. Heiser goes through the capital budget, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stansky. Good evening, everyone. This one pager, which is what I'll spend my time on, is certainly more straightforward than the operating budget. The FY 2025 capital budget, as a reminder, the recommendation from the Board of Education was $234.9 million, and the county executive proposed budget is $183.1 million, leaving us with a subtraction of $51.8 million in the difference. And so as I run through this sheet, I am particularly fond of this one pager, quite honestly. It's very straightforward, and you'll see in blue the modifications. And so as a reminder, we have 24 priority areas that we rank order there. And in blue, you see modifications. You see 10 in blue that are modified. 8 of which are reductions, 2 of which are increases. You see one in red, which is one area that has not been funded. In white, you see areas that have been met by the county executive to be supported as the same as our request. So with that, I'll go through this very quickly. 1 through 5 priority orders: health and safety, security-related upgrades, building systemics, maintenance, backlog reductions, and roof replacements, all fully supported. Number 6 in blue is an adjusted, and that's a relocatable classrooms, and we requested 1.2 million, and that came in from the county executive team as 400,000. 7 and 8, asbestos abatement and barrier-free access, both supported as requested. Number 9, sustainability initiatives. Again, we requested 2 million, and it's just slightly under that at 1.8 million. Number 10, school bus replacement was a $3 million proposed budget, and that's coming in from the county executive as 1 million less at 2 million. 11, school bus facility lot feasibility and design. Again, that is supported. That's in white. Number 12, Board of Education project and program planning. It was a $300,000 request, and that's the one that was not supported. But we have a way of moving forward with that. So we have a way of doing our 10-year planning document there, which is not a concern to us. 13, it's additions, and that was a $4 million request, and the county executive proposed budget there is 2.8 million. Cat North construction met with full support. 15 and 16 is the Old Mill High School construction, with Old Mill High School as 15, and 16 is the Old Mill Middle School North construction. Those requests at 69.7 million and 45.1 million. And as you recall from previous conversations, due to changes in state funding in the IAC and how we're calculating adjacencies, I want to commend Kyle Roof and his team and thank the team at the county for our ability to work together on this and be nimble and make some adjustments. And we'll be seeking to use BTL funding approval in the fall of 2024 for the Old Mill High School, which is why you see that reduction there. And then for Old Mill Middle School North, again, that project completion will be moved 1 year so that we can meet some of the adjacency and the program and utilization space needs that we have to do. And so both will align with one another and open in September of 2028. So we feel good about the ability to be agile in that situation. Health room modifications, fully met at $350,000. School furniture was $600,000, and it was a slight decrease of $100,000 there to $500,000. Upgrading of various schools was 1.15 million, and that was an increase of 1.2 million. Vehicle replacement, again, just a slight decrease in the county executive proposed budget from 500,000, which was our request, to 400,000. And we're almost to the end. So number 21 and 22, aging schools and playground equipment improvements, both fully met. 23 was another increase, was the second increase that we saw in athletic stadium improvements. And again, our request was 3.5, and that's gone just above now 4 million. And the last item on driveway and parking lot improvements was met at 1.5 million. So that concludes the kind of the high level summary that we have. I'm also joined here by Kyle Ruff, and we're all here to answer questions that we may have about either budgets. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're through with the presentations, and happy Mr. Silkworth to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Ms. Schellheim.
Thank you, I think, for the presentation. I was way more optimistic earlier today. I'm feeling a little sad about the operating budget in a number of places. With this board's priority to support the mental health of our students, I'm not sure how we do that with less. I'm also not entirely sure how we open new schools with far less teachers than requested, although I know you explained it. Subs, custodians, TAs, special education staff. I mean, these are all very, very concerning because the knock-on effect of this is, of course, having larger class sizes elsewhere to accommodate the opening of a new school. And so, I mean, it's better than what we've had historically most years for sure. I'm just concerned about a number of different areas. These are just mostly comments. I mean, let me not forget to talk about compensation. Um, our staff, all of our staff and our teachers obviously deserve more than what this than what the county executive's budget provides. I mean, we have folks in the secretaries and assistants association who bring home $25,000 a year, and I'm not kidding. That's not hyperbole. And then never mind the fact that our teachers don't make as much as they ought to, all of them. So, like I said, I was way more optimistic hearing his remarks earlier today than I am at the moment. This makes me pretty sad. Getting rid of the virtual homework help and the tutoring, I think, is a mistake. Just being clear, I that was one of the bright shining stars that came out of the dumpster fire that was the pandemic. I don't know how well that program is utilized anymore. Maybe you can convince me otherwise, but I thought that was a really cool thing that we offered, and see it go away is, or at least not be funded here. I don't know if it's going to go away entirely. That's my assumption. Am I correct in my assumption? Will it
Yeah,
disappear?
so the grant that is currently paying for it expires in December. So we would have funding for that program through December.
Yeah, that makes me enormously sad. I can go on and on about the yellow I see on this, all the special education not being supported, etc. And then this is a backward step in terms of our ability to transport students with the non-funding of those positions. So yeah, I'm bummed. Obviously, I'm going to lobby. I'm going to encourage all my colleagues to lobby. The people we're supposed to be lobbying at this point, y'all, for folks listening in at home, is our county council. They are the final arbiters of the budget. They hold the purse strings. Lobbying all of them is a good idea. I talk to all of them every year about the budget. And yeah, I'm super bummed. This is not what I was expecting, although I know it could be worse, and it has been worse under, previous administrations for sure, going back. Folks who have been here a long time know that, this is not maintenance of effort, thank God. But yeah, this bums me out. So thanks for hearing me.
Yep.
Ms. Ellis.
Thank you. I think I have 2 points as far as what jump out at me significantly. And I guess I'll preface it with Mr. Stansky, you are always reassuring, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I've ever seen you panic. But
They
I do.
but yeah.
Behind the scenes, I'm sure you do all the time.
Yeah. That's why I have an office.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I do appreciate your reassurance. But so I understand, a lot of what we see here that's asked for are considered program enhancements. But if you're opening a school, you're opening a school. So if you only budget or you only fund 3 teachers to open a school, you're essentially cutting teachers. We're not adding teachers, we're cutting teachers because they have to come from somewhere else because you have to open the school.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a lot about staffing later this month. It's nuanced because, right, so Severn Run, you're pulling a lot of students out of Old Mill, right? So if as a stepping back outside of, you know, my role, if I'm a funding authority, I'd say, okay, well, if you're losing 35% of your population at Old Mill High School, you wouldn't need all those teachers still at Old Mill High School, right? We try to couple our teacher requests for new schools with the understanding that for sure some existing enrollment-based teachers are gonna transfer, right? But that there are certain ways high schools function that may need additional positions, and so we had our request of 94, which the board fully agreed with. You know, the county had to make other decisions. I don't know how else to, right. And so I don't take my advice to you lightly. And so if I think I think this cut would impact our ability to open that school, I would tell you so. I don't believe it will impact our ability to open the school. It may not open the way we would completely like it, with like the smaller class sizes and robust offerings. I think we're still going to have a good set of robust offerings with the teaching workforce we'll have there. It's just not going to be to the extent that we would like, but it will still be resourced and ready to go on August 26th.
Thank you. And my other point, I also have grave concern about a pretty low dollar item, which is the tutoring. I guess, Dr. Badal, I would like to get, if we have any data on the utilization of that.
Yeah, we can do that.
That would be very helpful. But that's again, and you could look for a return on investment throughout this budget, but that's got to be a pretty high. Again, it's a pretty low dollar item that brings a very important service to our students, it seems to me. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Corkadell.
Thank you, President Silkworth. So I do think that a budget proposal reflects the values of the individual making the proposal. And so just like we had our priorities, we can see that unfortunately reflected in some of these. And I gotta say, English language development zeroed out, and all of the special ed to me is just, we're talking about, when I look at this budget, I see 100% new Village Academy charter. I see our counselors, our social emotional, and our special education positions in these new schools on top of the ones that we know we desperately need in order to meet the needs of our most vulnerable individuals is really making my stomach turn. And the fact that we've got folks and we're supposed to be welcoming new families into our community and our bigger, broader community of our country, and we don't have enough support to help them. So I don't understand why these folks have received zero value all the way down to a constituent service person that would help our special education community. There was a lot of discussion at the legislature because our special education families are strapped. Their health bills, their medical bills, and all of their other needs are tenfold greater than the average family. And so when they do have to defend sometimes the rights of their students or feel compelled to investigate a concern, they oftentimes don't have that support. The support is going in a more modified version in the previous years, finally to give them support. But in the bigger picture, the students first and foremost need actual special education teachers working with them. I find it unconscionable that in our society that we will start to pick and choose who gets and who does not get, particularly when it's involving our most vulnerable populations. And to open a school that we just opened up, Crofton High School, and this county decided to fund that 100%. Our recommendations, because we did it responsibly. We didn't ask for more staff than what we needed. So we're telling a bunch of families that you're getting a brand shiny new school, but you're not going to have the educational opportunities that our other schools do. And now the schools that do have educational opportunities, we're going to have to do a lot of reallocation. And I am very concerned about that. If you think that the reallocations that have been proposed this spring are concerning, well, times that by a lot more, because we needed these positions for a reason. And Matt, I appreciate we're going to be able to open up those schools, because if it weren't for the creativity and innovation, we would be stopped dead in its tracks in our investment to create an environment, a good learning environment where we will be successful, is greatly marginalized. I understand some of the other cuts that need to occur. I've actually been part of the review of the capital budget before, and I understand there's some gives and takes and holdbacks for a year. And there's a 5-year plan that sits back behind this that we're just not seeing the scope of. So they do a lot. There is sliding that has to occur because of the co-funding and some other factors. But when we're talking about an operating budget for year upon year upon year, where special education has been cut down, slashed and burned continuously, I gotta ask our funders, is that your priority? Is that how you want to be viewed as treating our most vulnerable population? Because the need of these positions is incredibly significant. And I know we've got to work with our funders, and I'm just going to suggest that on the county council side, that they evaluate if they share these same values that this budget being proposed is reflecting. Dr. Bedell proposed a very mean, lean, bare basics budget of what do we actually need to have. And I don't feel that that message was well enough recognized. I think we do make progress here, and I'm not going to pull out every single one, but when I see my most vulnerable not being funded, I just think that's an atrocity. Thank you.
Dr. Tobin.
Yeah, so couple of questions regarding the capital budget. So we have a certain number of buses we have to run, and we have a certain timeline on which those buses have to be replaced. So if we're getting 2 million of the 3 million that we requested, how do we handle that?
Yeah. Well, you're right. We do have a plan to order new buses every 10 to 15 years as we replace them, and we're on target to do so. And we also build in a certain number of growth buses as well.
Yep.
We obviously will not be able to replace as many buses that we had thought about. With that said, I'm confident that given the safety inspections that we do, that we're putting safe buses on the road when we're not able to replace them, which I think is paramount. And but we continue to project going forward and what we will need, how we will replace those buses over time. And I think we need to be, while we make it work this coming year, it's suitable. Going forward, I think we need to be conscious of the fact that we can't have continued reductions in this area.
Yeah, because there's a law, right? I mean, we have to, I know the period was extended
Sure.
over this last, which seemed wise to me, but nonetheless, we have to comply.
Point is well taken.
And to piggyback on Ms. Corkadell's comment, I'm a little taken aback, and I don't mean by this that I don't appreciate athletics, but to overfund the athletic stadium improvement seems to me odd. I see Mr. Roof coming up.
And the grant, I think.
So I'm just curious as to what that means, what that amounts to, and
The overfunding is associated with grant funding that we received through the legislative
okay.
grant process. So
Okay.
Rundle High School Field House and then Chesapeake High School Field House were both funded.
Got it. Okay, so that makes sense. All right, thank you. But I'm in agreement with a lot of what my colleagues have said, and I will simply say to those who are listening here and online, understand the implications of this budget. Now, again, it's not a done deal. The county council has to vote on it. But if it goes through like this, if you find yourself in a position where you're upset about class sizes, understand it is directly related to this. And so to the public, I would say, if you have a concern about this, you need to be talking to your county council. The same thing if you're concerned about the lack of social workers in your child's school, or the lack of counselors in your child's school, or the lack of anything in your child's school. It's all tied to this. And I think, as Ms. Ellis said, we've got things that are very relatively low budget items. And I hope we can see that data that will have shown, I think, are likely to show a very high ROI. And so I think there's some very short-sighted things here that could have a profound impact on our students' outcomes, which is, again, the reason we're all here. And so I think we have to, I hope the public will connect the dots, that we work with what we have, and we depend on the advocacy of the public to make those who are making these decisions understand that this matters. They hear plenty from all of us, and like Ms. Schalheim said, we will all lobby them, but they pretty much know what we have to say. I think it matters when our employees, the public, everybody comes before these decision makers and makes it clear that this matters. And with the blueprint requires us to do what I think is the right thing, which is for the money to follow the child. And so we are going to be allocating resources where the need is, which means that you may have a school that may lose some of what you've had not because of the blueprint, but because the system is not appropriately funded. And the gaps show up when you send the money specifically where the need is. We would like every school to be highly staffed, highly resourced. Not every school can be in this structure. So, and what schools are and what are not may change, because the underfunding of the system will show those gaps as we send the resources where the highest need is. So I just want the public to be aware of that. Thank you for the presentation. I know this was just a lovely day for all of you to put this together quickly. Thank you very much. And again, I too appreciate the professionalism of our staff, the careful planning, the fact that none of this is not the first rodeo for any of you, and you know what you have to do. But I also hope we are being as transparent and clear as possible about where the gaps are going to be significant. And I do know we continue to want to get our backlogs taken care of. We have maintenance and so forth. And every time we have to claw back from a budget, those backlogs and all sort, whether it's in the hiring that we can't do, or the buildings we can't do all the things to we would like to, or having less custodial staff than is optimal. All of those things have impacts. So thank you all.
Ms. Frank.
Thank you, President Silkworth. Absolutely, thank you, gentlemen, for preparing this for us on such quick turnaround. It's very comprehensive, and I appreciate all of your comments tonight. I have a couple of questions, and firstly, I would like to say that while I'm an extremely conservative individual fiscally, this is a lot more red pen than even I expected, so I was disappointed to see that. Blueprint was brought up, so I doubt that you would have this answer tonight, but just as a get back to me later question, what funding percentage was required by Blueprint versus allocation toward other increases that we had? If you have that number, great. If you don't, just let me know at a later date.
Yeah, I'll get it back to you.
Okay. I know it's a quick turnaround. I have some questions about Two Rivers, and you may or may not have this as well. What are the total staffing levels compared to other schools of that size?
Yeah, I think it will be roughly the same.
Roughly the same.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, and then I have two questions on transportation. I saw several areas that are impacted by transportation. Can you outline what that impact is going to be? As far as our transportation needs, are we going to be able to meet our needs?
So yeah, I'll talk. The first cut is the overall increase to contractors for their, so the answer to that is yes. Given where our current spend is for fiscal 24, I feel comfortable with this cut and meeting those contractual obligations for 25. So there'll be no service cuts. So I think this is a fine cut. I think the additional 2.1 million will be fine. The cut to the van and drivers and aides, what that means is we will have 4 vans that will just have to be spares as opposed to actually out in service, right? So the idea was these vans, I believe, are going to come in this summer. Those will then have to be spare vans when we have vans in for repairs, as opposed to the initial plan, which would be to staff them with drivers and aides and to get more students from the non-public setting into those vehicles.
Okay, you mentioned the bus contracts and having a cut there. Will this impact those salaries, do you know?
It will not, no. So the COLA that is contractually obligated will still be fully funded.
Okay, great. And then my last question is, I believe it's FY26 where we're required to implement electric vehicles. Is that correct?
So January of 25, any new contract for routes that we issue or purchase of new buses will have to be electric. But there are waiver provisions in that law that we could make ourselves available to if we qualify.
Is any infrastructure created for that at this point?
At the moment?
Yeah.
No.
So there's no
Dr.
charging
Heiser's leading that
stations
effort
yeah.
with Mr. Roof. We're looking through some things, but we're not aware of any contractors that are working to get infrastructure in place. We've applied for some grants to help build out our infrastructure, but nothing as of yet.
Okay. So not only do we not have infrastructure, we are cutting our transportation as it currently is. That was rhetorical.
Yeah.
And then the 4 areas that we're looking at were the alternative vehicle programs, bus transportation contracts, and then the capital budget was the vehicle replacement, school bus replacement, those 4 areas, correct? Or is there anything else?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
On the transportation side, yeah, I believe that was it. Yep.
Okay. So 4 cuts to transportation. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. So, Mr. Stansky, Dr. Heiser, Mr. Roof, thank you so much for everything that you do. I have to echo a few of my colleagues who said that they felt a little better this morning than we do now. However, it just simply means it's time to advocate and collaborate. And so I have some of the same concerns that many of my colleagues have voiced in the past few minutes. We are not the only ones who need to be advocating and collaborating. So everyone that's interested in the education of our young people out there, please take a look at this and please join us as we do advocate and collaborate for all of our kids. Dr. Bedell.
Yeah, I don't know. As a superintendent, I have the responsibility of trying to keep people uplifted, trying to look at what's the good in a bad situation. I predicted this months ago. I clearly said to everybody that we were in for a world of trouble. This has been forecasted really over the last 3 years, that as ESSER money goes away, that districts that did not necessarily manage or put all of their money into staffing, those districts were going to be in a situation where they were going to have to do some cutting. Fortunately for Anne Arundel County, these people have already done a really good job of beginning to offload. So the blow that we're feeling right now isn't as severe as some of my other colleagues. Now, when I talk, whether it's Orange County and Memphis, the superintendent, $100+ million budget deficit, or the superintendent in Spring ISD in Houston, Texas, outside of Houston, Texas, where they have to put a freeze on their people even being able to travel because their budget situation is dire, to folks here in the state of Maryland, some who have retired as a result of not barely being able to get above maintenance of effort in some of these school districts. I'm not happy with the outcome of this budget, but I also know it could be far, far worse. I have listened to county executives on talk radio talk about the fact that we're not going to do any more for this particular school district. And we were able to get 48 million above maintenance of effort. And so, yes, this is not a year for us to be joyful about things, and we shouldn't be. And we should do what we need to do to continue to advocate. And I promise you, I will do that. But I also know it is important for me to say to people, it could be a lot worse. It could be far worse. And even as I'm, texting with folks, whether it's our union president over here, and saying to them, look, we're still getting, in most cases, a 5% pay raise when other districts are cutting, right? I hear you, Ms. Corkadell. You're absolutely right. The neglect with special education should concern every single one of us. It's a reason why we have made some staffing decisions to try to work to fix that. But also, even if we were able to get all of those positions, I still got 40 as of February that we still haven't been able to fill. So getting the additional 40 or whatever we may have requested only puts us now at 80, or now that report I'm giving you shows that we're going to have even more vacancies, right? So like, I got to do a better job, and I know our team is doing this, to do everything in our power to fill the positions that we currently have. Because if I don't do that, even if I go to request more, they're gonna see the report that I put out every week, because we're transparent as a district. They're gonna see that, and they're gonna say, why are we funding this when they haven't even filled the positions that they have, right? And I think this is my position, everybody in this community. I need people to hear this. Just like I would tell a principal, back me into a corner where I don't have a choice but to do what you're asking me to do, whether it's for additional funding or if it's for additional staffing. We got to back our county executive and elected officials into a corner where they don't have a choice. And I think with our inability at this juncture to really fully staff and have that vacancy rate at 0, it's going to be hard on us to fight that. So I know there's work that we have to do. You guys have all made that a part of my evaluation.
I'm going to do everything to try to meet my evaluation goals. You have my promise on that. We are, and you see the numbers. They're getting better, but we're not at zero across the board. And we got to get there. And then we got to make sure that these enrollment numbers increase, right? Because as enrollment increases, it's going to force our officials to have to fund this district at a better rate. And I get it. We had some terrible years in this county. We have not caught up. And to your point, Dr. Tobin, all of these, and it's a lot of unfunded mandates. There's so many unfunded mandates that it doesn't make any sense. So the fight has to be also that we cannot continue to allow for legislation to pass that puts an additional burden on us, and constantly we're having to figure out how we're gonna adjust and make sure that we can fund things that are constantly being done to us. Because that's the thing I'm learning being here 2 years. We get treated in a very disrespectful way as school systems in this state by the General Assembly, and I'll call it out because this is the reality of it. And until we begin to say, no, let the experts help inform on what needs to happen in these schools, then we're going to continue to fall. Yep, we were 10 years ago, number 1, number 2 in the country. We're 40 now, and we're going to continue to drop until there is a reckoning in this state around priorities, what's important, what the focus needs to be. And if we're going to do things, then good Lord, we need to figure out how to make sure that we can fund them. It's that serious. So, yep, I'm not all that happy about this, but it could be a lot worse. And that is really my remarks as it pertains to this budget.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. Once again, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to be moving on to item 6.01, 6.06. Do I hear a motion to bundle?
Yeah, for sure. Let's move to bundle item 6.01 to 6.06, please.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education authorize the award of the consent item contracts as seen on the screen, 6.01 through 6.06.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Ms. Howe?
Thank you. Can we back up and just ensure that there's no dissent on the bundling?
Oh, okay. Do we have consensus on the bundling?
Thank you.
We do. Thank you, Ms. Howe.
Thank you. Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent? I'm sorry, she's not here. Mr. Lynn?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
And Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, some action items. Item 7.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Bedell.
Mr. President, the superintendent recommends that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Howe?
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Mr. Lynn?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, item 7.02, personnel.
Thank you, Mr. President. The superintendent recommends that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Howe?
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Mr. Lynn?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, moving on to item 7.03. We're on the second reading, reporting crimes and delinquent acts, code KFB.
Thank you, Mr. President. Grace Wilson will present this second read of this policy.
Good evening, President Silkworth, Vice President Frank, members of the board, and Dr. Bedell. I'm Grace Wilson, Legislative and Policy Specialist for the school district. Policy KFB, Reporting Crimes and Delinquent Acts, is before you this evening on second reading. As a reminder, this policy, this was previously Policy 505.02, which was last revised December 6th, 1989, and was rescinded by the board in July of 2018. Staff believes it's important to reissue this policy to ensure compliance with COMAR 13A 080115, which requires that school officials promptly report to law enforcement any delinquent acts coming to their attention, and to ensure that school staff are also reporting crimes of violence and reporting other crimes that come to their attention as well. There was one comment received during the 30-day public comment, and that was provided for you this evening's meeting materials. The policy will be back on third reading May 15th, and I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, seeing no lights, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, we're moving on to item 7.04, food and nutrition services pricing for 2024-25.
Thank you,
school year.
Mr. President. The superintendent recommends no increase in the food and nutrition services pricing for the 2024-2025 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments?
No comments, sir.
Okay, so I do see a couple lights. Ms. Shalhan.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for all the work that you do. I'm stunned and amazed that we're able to keep the pricing the same as in many other years prior. But I do have a question related to, I think, some feedback we received from some students regarding what Montgomery County is able to do in their offerings and how we might explore that to some more variety and that kind of thing. And so I wanted to know where you're at, if anywhere, on those sorts of things.
Sure. And for the record, it's Jody Rissy, Supervisor of Food and Nutrition Services for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Montgomery County, all of the counties in Maryland, we coordinate all of our efforts all the time. So I'm very familiar with their menu. They do have probably 2 more hot options than we do a day in high school. Elementary is really the same or even less than what we're currently offering in our school district. Probably the biggest difference for us in Anne Arundel County is our unlimited fruits and vegetables. So we offer upwards of 2 to 3 cups a day that our students can take on their lunch trays, which is very different than Montgomery, Howard, any of the other counties in Anne Arundel, in the state of Maryland. All very good, but I think not to the extent or have the concentration like we have for fruits and vegetables and the variety. We currently offer a 4-week cycle, and so do both, like Montgomery, Prince George's does, Howard County does, along with Baltimore County. So very similar. We use a lot of the same items. In Montgomery County, they actually make their taco. We already have it made from one of our vendors. So I really don't think there's that big of a difference, if any, and I still think we're offering much more than they do in respect to fruits and vegetables.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I don't have any other questions. Thank you for your explanation.
Thank you.
Ms. Corkadell.
Ms. Reese, I just always love your leadership and how you make amazing things happen for our students. Nutrition is the hallmark and is the only way that our kids are going to be prepared to learn in the first place. And the fact that if you think about all the prices going up and all of the inflation and everything, to be sitting here yet another year looking at the same price, the only year that we had to add any money to food services was the mid-year legislative adjustment that the local county council had made without granting it till the end of our term. We had to scrounge up another $500,000, I believe, or $400 and some thousand, nothing to do with the food itself, or any grace granted by the council. But I will just say that this is what, compared to what I remember growing up eating in the cafeteria, this is leaps and bounds. And I would challenge our food service chefs to any other county's food service chefs for a little throwdown.
We would welcome the
Might not be a
challenge.
bad little spirit of, maybe such as Montgomery County, for example. I think we would be up to the challenge, and you and your team just do outstanding work. And considering that we don't always have full staff for them back there, they make sure each and every child knows that they've got a good meal coming to them. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought up the shortages because we are extremely short. We're still, in the 80 plus short. And our meal participation for both breakfast and lunch is higher than pre-COVID. So it's just amazing. We have less staff than we've ever had. We might gain one, we lose one. So it's really been challenging. Our team is phenomenal. We couldn't do any of this without the great teams out there in the schools.
This is not the lunch lady like that song or
Not at
anything
all.
like that. What we have going on here there is a lot of good opportunities in our school system, and food and nutrition is a great one and a great way to connect with kids at a very healthy, intimate way.
Thank you.
Ms. Frank.
Yes, thank you. I also got the springtime memo on the wardrobe, Miss Reese. So lovely.
We called each other twinning.
I have a couple just kind of basic questions. I
Sure.
appreciate, year over year we come back and we get the good news. So I appreciate that. You mentioned that they may in other counties have slightly more offerings per day. How many do we offer a day in high school?
So in high school, we do one hot entree. They typically have a second that would be, if it was left from the day before, they can reheat it and serve it if it's of good quality. And then we do a cold grab and go. So the big thing that we left off of our menu since before COVID is our entree salad and a yogurt parfait. So as soon as we can get our staffing back up to, where they can make all those entree salads. So we had a salmon salad, a chicken salad. I mean, we had all those great entree salad options. They'll be back. But right now we don't have the staffing even to add those two.
Got it. Okay. So it's more of a staffing, less of a.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And how do we compare cost-wise to Montgomery County?
They are, I believe, a nickel under us. So we're very similar.
Oh.
No price increases for them this year either. Really, all of our jurisdictions around us are still
Similar
holding their
costs?
prices as well. Howard County is more than us by 30 cents at lunch.
Right.
But again, no price increase for them. So I think pretty much across the state, we're all keeping pricing. Some higher than us, just a few, a nickel or so under us.
Okay. I'm surprised to hear that, but okay. And then you mentioned our fruits and vegetables, that we have offerings for students and they can, eat lots and lots of fruits and veggies. Do we have that down pretty well as far as how much we're going through a day, or do we tend to have any leftover kind of waste, or not so much?
No, not so much at all. So it's all forecasted. I think our staff does a fantastic job really knowing what they're forecasted and what they used, day before. So they order accordingly. Our fruits and vegetables are still all coming prepackaged in half-cup portions. So we can have a student come through. I was at a high school just the other day. I was at Woodside, even on Friday. And the students are amazing. They could have 2 or 3 clementines, a half of cup of, fresh apple slices. They still have their steamed vegetable and they might take the celery sticks. So I think they have a really good handle. We encourage filling half of their tray with fruits and vegetables. And we really see the students doing that. So running short's not really happening, and we don't have extra that we're throwing it out. Even if there was broccoli left over, we'd be able to roast it. We can cook it the next day. So they have really good utilization of fruits and vegetables.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Tobin.
Yes, I want to add my thanks, and please come do the grocery shopping in my house. But the other thing I wanted to mention, and again, this is just a continuation of what I said earlier, to your point about the fact that you are still working with a lot of vacancies. I mean, I congratulate your team on what they're doing. But let me say again to the public, if you're listening and if you care about this, our food service workers have a disproportionate impact on many of our most vulnerable students, because our students who are on free and reduced priced meal plans depend almost exclusively often on getting their breakfast and lunch at school. And when we are short staff, and as you've just indicated, that means, for example, at the high school level, there are things that we can't offer. When that is where you are getting your food, that makes a huge difference. And so to those who advocate for these things, to those who care about equity, to those who care about ensuring that our most vulnerable have what they need, please advocate with your county council about this. We need these food service workers, and we need them to be compensated so that they can survive on what they're making. And so that's my request. Along with my thanks to you, Ms. Reese, you have managed throughout this, the pandemic, staffing shortages, your team is extraordinary. But I'm sure they could use the help. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Schellheim.
Which cleverly brings me back to one of my aforementioned points, which is if you pay them better, they will come. So, you know, that extra 2% county executive would have helped a lot, because not all of our, there are a fair amount of staff still in our midst who make an appallingly low salary. Just saying. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no more lights, I think we have a motion and a second. Ms. Howe.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Mr. Lynn?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Dr. Bedell.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Reese. Thank you. Great job. I know we're getting ready to close out this board meeting, but you know, anytime you say something and it's on the record, you know, I have this opportunity to also make some amendments. The comment I made about the General Assembly, and I want this on the record, I mean that. It doesn't mean that every single member of the General Assembly doesn't have education at its first and at its best interests. But there have been too many examples in the short 2 years that I've been here around in my opinion, the neglect, the ability to sit down with educators and try to figure out how we can come up with common sense legislation that's going to, in essence, move our system in this state forward. And that's what I'm encouraging that we begin to really focus on in this state. And then finally, for me, a lot of adult-centered issues between legislators, in my opinion, have also stifled our ability to be as great as we need to be in this state when it comes to some of the things I've seen in the General Assembly that are stifling education. And that's the way I see it. And I want to put that out there for the record so that people can hear me loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. So we're moving on to item review item 8.01, award of contracts. Any comments, questions? Okay, seeing none. We do not have any comments, public comments on non-agenda items this evening. So for the public, I'd like to remind the public that we will have our next board meeting May 15th at 10 a.m. meeting here in the boardroom. Policy Committee meets Tuesday, May 28th at 3 p.m. virtual. Budget Committee Monday, May 13th. It'll be 12 p.m. virtual. And Equity Committee Tuesday, May 21, 2024, 12 p.m. virtual. And don't forget the May 6th at North County High School Community and May 8th at Meade Middle. So do we have a motion? I believe we need a motion to enter an exec-
Yeah, no, Mr. President, I
sorry.
move that the board go into closed session
Oh,
to
yeah.
consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to go into executive session. A second. Do we have consensus? We do. Good night. So, I knew we had to go.